Welcome to the Mike and Alison After Hours podcast with your hosts, Mike Sheila and Alison Haas, talking business with real business owners in the Mid-Atlantic region. Today's episode is sponsored by Advantage Industries. When you need business technology, get Advantage Industries to protect and promote your business. To learn more, go to www.getadvantage.com and schedule your first meeting to see if you qualify for a free network scan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mike and Alison After Hours. I am your host, Mike Sheila, and with me, my co-host is the always honorable and often hydrated Alison Haas. Alison, how the heck are you today?
I've got two drinks right here, my water and my coffee. So well stated, sir. I'm good.
I was just thinking, considering what you were just telling me pre-show, maybe that wasn't.
Oh my gosh. Hey.
So for our listening audience, Alison took an excursion last week. She had to recharge her batteries. I did something not nearly as cool, frankly, but I took a couple of days off for a mental health break as well. And that mental health is critical to being successful in a job, right? So we're back. We're better than ever, to quote the famous ESPN morning show from years gone by. And today we have a fantastic guest. Her name is Cindy Parr, and she is the executive director of the ARC of Howard County. Let me just give you just a little bit of context on them. The ARC of Howard County began in 1961 as a volunteer parent support group. It is the oldest and largest nonprofit organization in Howard County that provides services to over 400 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. From our experienced professional staff to our skilled job coaches and dedicated residential counselors, the ARC people are helping in the most fundamental ways. Since its inception over 50 years ago, the ARC has grown from a small group of parents to one of the country's largest employers with more than 300 staff members and hundreds of volunteers. Just a fantastic organization, and I'm going to introduce Cindy in just a moment. But for our listening audience and our watching audience, because I know a lot of you are watching this on the Advantage Industries YouTube channel, as always, thank you for tuning in. We are exceptionally grateful that you join us on a regular basis. And for you devoted listeners and watchers, we still have two incentives coming for you. First, our friend Andrew Freedman wrote a book called Thrive with his company Shift, and we are giving away an autographed copy of that book. All you have to do is drop a comment, share our podcast, whether you're the video or you're on one of the 10,000 podcast platforms that we are on, because we are on iTunes, we are on Amazon, we are on Spotify, we are on TuneIn, we are on Stitcher, we are on Podbean, iHeartRadio. You name it, you can find us. And in fact, my favorite, you can say, Alexa, play the Mike and Alison After Hours podcast, and you will find us. So get out there, be our boots on the street, help us spread the word about this show, because this is for business owners to learn from other business leaders. And Cindy's going to be a great example of that today as the executive director for a nonprofit, because running a nonprofit, well, comes with its own unique and interesting challenges, but it's really not that different from running a business. So we're going to get into some of that with Cindy in just a few moments. And the double bonus for you business owners that have at least 10 employees, our good friend Andrew is also giving away a 1-hour coaching session for your team. So get busy, drop comments, give likes, give shares of our posts, and you will be the lucky winner or winners as we announce them in June. So with that, Cindy Parr, welcome to the show today.
Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you both for having me.
Of course.
And Cindy, as I mentioned in the earlier, the green room before we came on air, we had a couple of nonprofits on back in November for the Thanksgiving special. And what your organization does is especially near and dear to my heart. I have a 15-year-old son with autism. He is also what they call clinically intellectually disabled, which, gosh, doesn't that sound like a nice term? And I'm hoping we'll get into a little bit of the context of what your organization does and how they help people like my son on a daily basis. So the show is broken into two pieces. There is the who, what, where, when, why, how, which Allison's going to take you through today. And then once you transition over to me, we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a leader, particularly in a nonprofit, particularly in the Howard County area. You are the final in our Howard County trifecta. So we had Leonardo McClarty on a couple episodes ago, the executive director and president of the Howard County Chamber. We had Marianne Scully on last time, the CEO of Howard Bank. So this has been a really nice 3-part Howard County-centric series, and we're so excited to have you on. So, Alison, take it away.
We are. Good morning, Cindy. Thanks for joining us. And so this first segment is a blend, and it's at your discretion to take it in any direction you want. So it's who, what, when, why, where, how. And that can be part personal, that can be part professional, that can be a mix. So, Cindy, what do you want the audience to know first about who you are?
Well, I'm a, kind of an interesting duck, if you will. I, as a nonprofit executive right now, nonprofit has not been my portfolio for the crux of my professional career. I started out in the private sector, in the defense industry.
Very different.
Engineering field, architectural engineering field, and then I'm literally a journalist by trade. These sorts of things are very fun to me, you know, to have the conversations. Writing has always been it's been foundational in my career. I moved into the public sector. I worked in local government for 50 years in Carroll County. And then I had a springboard opportunity from there to become the executive director of Human Services Programs, Carroll County, which is their community action agency back in 2011. I tell people then when I came to Howard in 2015 to become the executive director of Parr, I'd say I was the Beta Dayhoff of Carroll County. Those who live in Howard County know Beta Dayhoff is the CEO, president of the Action Council of Howard County. And it's just been a progression, a natural progression for me professionally, because my roots are about advocacy and being a voice for those whose voices need amplification. And I found my way into government, local government that way, constituent services, Carroll County, and it just evolved through HSP, working for low-income and at-risk individuals, and now working with adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I've been at the ARC since 2015. I was very fortunate to succeed my predecessor, who was Carol Beatty, who's now the Secretary of Disabilities for the state of Maryland. Carol had been here probably about 21 years and really left a fine organization for me to. So the last 6 years has been extremely rewarding, certainly challenging, as we all know, because of the pandemic this past year, and still something that we're in. So, in addition to the fact when I entered this field, there were many things going on in the disabilities field. Community settings rule, final rule, which is a term that was handed down from Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, which is to integrate people with disabilities into the community, make sure or ensure that we as disability services providers were doing that. So it's been a very last 6 years of change in this. Personally, and you can tell me if I'm too long-winded and we're running out of time.
Nope, you're great. You're
You get
answering
all the time you want.
asking that I would anyway. This is fantastic.
Yes, personally, I'm a mother of 3 grown daughters. I have a 35-year-old daughter, and she's married. My son-in-law, they both have 2 sons, my 2 grandsons, 7 and 4. And I have a 1-year-old daughter who's married, and she and her husband have a 1-month-old son and a son on the way in May or June. And then I have a 27-year-old daughter who is in the Annapolis area, and they make me very proud. I just think it's so ironic that my daughters that are married and having children are having sons when I had the 3 daughters. And honestly say now, as a mother of daughters and a grandmother of boys, there is a huge difference in the two. And I'm just a very happy person. I'm very simple. I I mentioned earlier professionally, my foundational piece has always been writing. And I love to write, and I've been very fortunate that I've been able to write throughout all of the facets of my careers, if you will. And I continue to write for myself, for my pleasure, and maybe one day, somewhere down the road, I'll get back to that. I enjoy my life with my partner of almost 8 years and our 2 dogs right now. And I enjoy the beach. I have a house. We have a little house in Lewis, Delaware that's in the midst of a construction project right now, which is driving me a little crazy. And then we also live in Burtonsville, Maryland. So just over the Howard County. But, my work has always been the thing that drives me. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm just very passionate about advocacy, and I've been passionate throughout all my career areas to be able to be an advocate in some way, shape, or form.
And I really love what you said about giving voice to those that cannot do it themselves. I'm also a writer, and that's part of my pull to be able to shine a light in places where other people need, but that not necessarily are able to or feel safe enough to do so. So I really appreciate that very much. For those unfamiliar with the ARC, please tell us a little bit more about the ARC and what you all do for the community.
Certainly, Mike touched on a little bit in the intro. Grassroots organization, which is most all ARCs. ARC is a national brand. There's about 700 or so ARCs throughout the United States of America. 10 here in the state of Maryland, and fortunate here at the ARC Howard County to be one of those 10. The ARC Maryland is our umbrella or our advocacy agency that we all work together, and they do an incredible job. I got to give a shout out to Andy, who is executive director at the ARC, and certainly all my peers, my counterparts, ARCs throughout the state. We all have varying degrees of program services that we offer here at the ARC of Howard County. We offer residential services, day program services, community development services, supported employment, supported retirement, and pre-COVID respite services, because they are so totally focused on in-person services. We have not been able to provide them in the course of the last year. Our number of people we support covers, as Mike said earlier, about 400. A portion of those 400 are in referral services. Actual hands-on services are provided to probably about 275 people.
Wow.
We've had, in the last year has been interesting because our day program, we haven't had anyone receiving services in our building for a year. And we moved into a virtual platform, much like we're all doing now. We obviously in days would have been sitting in a studio having this conversation. But certainly podcasts and some that's now that have changed and offer us the opportunity and you to be wherever you are and me to be here. We're doing that now with our day program services. We're offering them to a lot of folks that we normally would have in the building that were receiving day services, and we're also doing a lot of our supported employment folks that provide job coaching, such to one at their job sites, and those who are not in the work environment we're in, to help them build their resumes and look at things that will be enhancing to their skill set for the.
That's great. That's great. And so before I pass the baton to Mike, we always ask our guests, how do we find you? How does someone connect with you and the ARC?
Well, we're on, Facebook, obviously, ARC Howard County, website, www. You don't have to have that anymore, I understand.
Oh.
.org. that's how you can find us. We're pretty out there. Our wonderful Director of Marketing and Communications, Barbara Moyer, does an excellent job.
Shout out to Barb. She made all this possible.
That's right. She does an outstanding job of keeping us out there in the forefront of the community. And those two places, certainly on social media, the Facebook. I actually think we might even be able to. But again, that's for those who know what they're doing on that side. But
Right.
website, arcoward.org.
Great. All right, Michael, sir.
Well, wonderful. And Cindy, we'll make sure all your contact information is in the show notes for our audience, because my hope is with this, first of all, that some business leaders are going to take inspiration from the stories that you're sharing with us today. But also, and again, I'm speaking very personally, having a child with a disability, after you come to terms with the diagnosis, regardless of what the diagnosis is, there's this incredible sense of loneliness. Thinking, yeah, okay, intellectually I understand. There are millions of people that have autism, that have Down syndrome, that have other intellectual disabilities. I mean, the list almost seems endless. But when it happens to you, it's so easy to feel like I'm all alone. And I love the fact that your organization is first about, well, you're not alone. We're here to support you in a variety of ways. You mentioned respite care as one of those things you haven't been able to do the last year, but as a core competency for your organization. I've visited probably 5 or 6 of the ARC headquarters in Maryland over the last 10 years. I'm a salesman, so that's what I do. And, what I always see are people that have intellectual disabilities, and with them I see a group of people that care just because they care. And I think that's almost the simplest way to put it, what makes an ARC employee, right? People that care because they care. And so, Cindy, talk to me a little bit about leadership from that perspective, because you come from about as opposite can be, right? Engineering in the defense industry? Wow. That's my world, So those are the people that I deal with on a daily basis, and 180 degrees away from that is leadership at a nonprofit for the community. So talk to us a little bit about that. What's leadership been like in this space for you?
It's I hate to overuse the word, but evolving is certainly the key word for me. I think my first stepping off point was leaving public service and to my first nonprofit gig in, Carroll County at Human Services Program. And one of the things that I realized that people that work in the nonprofit world, they're motivated very differently.
Very true.
It is, to your point about a sense of passion, compassion, purpose, wanting to help other people. They're driven by that desire to make a difference in someone else's life. And I felt that way a lot when I worked in local government, doing a lot of really integral constituent services, things that were affecting the greater good. But going into the nonprofit world became much more personal. For me, I started to realize a lot of things about myself that I thought were necessary in a leadership role in the nonprofit. And that is really, it's that truly being in a team. Because you want to be part of something. You want everybody to feel like they're part of something that's happening for the betterment of individuals, human beings. And it's the team, not to overuse the word, but the team approach, that everybody is of value and they bring something to the And in leadership for me, I think a lot of times people get caught up in what they have to bring, what they have to say, what they have to give, what they have to do. And in my takeaway has been, certainly in the nonprofit world, is tell me what you need. Tell me what it is that you see. Tell me how we can do better or what we're not doing as well. So simply stated, listening. Being a really good listener.
Bingo moment for our audience. Thank you.
And the listening part is not just about ears, but it becomes listening and seeing and involving yourself and engaging your environment and the people that are in your environment. And helicoptering has always been a term for me too. When I've gone into, I helicopter, I kind of fly around and, I watch and I observe and I see what makes people happy, what makes them work well, what makes them work not so well, and trying to identify those things and ever so gently bringing them to the forefront in a way around a senior leadership table in a team way where we come to the same conclusions about how we're going to run our organization together. I think I go back to the communications, the journalism piece. It's always been the best thing for me because that listening piece, and you have to be a good listener to be a good writer. Because if you're not hearing what people are saying to you, you can't serve up that story in a way that's going to best, benefit the public or the audience that's going to see it, or present the storyline in the best possible light as well. So I would say that the leadership in nonprofit is much more about stepping back, listening, observing, and letting people feel that they have you have their buy-in and they're part of the team. They're able to be a part of the change that you ultimately may want to make, or just the day-to-day that you're bringing to the organization.
Cindy, thank you for that, because you touched on two subjects that it seems every week Alison and I bring up now. And what you just so eloquently described is what we would distill down to essentially two words: emotional intelligence. Because running an organization, you have perspectives that are specifically driven by your experiences. And now you have to engage 300 plus people, not on a daily basis, but those people are reliant on you to some factor or another. So you've had to delegate, and you've had to put leadership pieces in different sectors of the organization. And that gives you the benefit of being able to do that helicopter piece. And I think a lot of people give a negative connotation to the word helicoptering, but what I took from yours is having that bird's eye view, being able to take that perspective and see everything that's going on. Yeah, maybe Bob's doing this on the left and Mary's doing this on the right. And then how do those two worlds come together so that they make the arc of Howard County? So brilliant. Thank you for that. And that leads to a wonderful question. Leadership and team building. You've been there 6 years now. I'm guessing you've had a little bit of turnover with your staff in that time. And one of the biggest challenges any business leader faces is building the right team. When you first take over a team, you're evaluating. You're like, okay, who fits the model? Who fits the culture? Who do we maybe need to replace? And who do you know is on their way out? Maybe they've checked out mentally. Maybe they're just, this isn't where they want to be anymore. So talk to us about, leadership and team building from that perspective.
Well, again, I think that helicoptering piece plays a big role in it, because when you come into an organization, and certainly for me, it was like not only did I come into an organization that was in a different location for me, a different county. Then I came to county 30 there into Howard. The second piece to that, I came into an organization that had a previous leader who had been here a long time, about that 21 years, and a senior leadership team who I think the youngest or least amount of years experience was probably like 7 or 8 years. So everybody on the leadership team had more experience here than I did. And by the helicoptering piece, I was able to take from, I would ask people, I'm only as good as you are. And
Wow. Bingo moment. Love it.
People to educate me. They all knew I did not come from this field. So that could have gone south really quick. We got this person in here that knows nothing about disabilities. So my approach was to say, help me understand, help me learn. I really value your opinions. And this isn't me just saying this to say it. I mean, it was true. I need you. I need you to help me. And I was very fortunate, and I had a leadership team. My one associate executive director of administration, who has since retired, but she was retiring before I got here. She told me right when I came through the door, she says, I'm out of here in 3 years. Don't take it personally, but I'm out of here in 3 years because I'm retiring. I said, okay. I said, so you and I, she had been here 27 years at the time. I said, so you and I and my other associate executive director of programs and services, who had been here probably 28, I leaned on both of them and I asked them, from the program services perspective and from the administration perspective, we're going to work and tell me, here's your opportunity to tell me in all the years you've been here, what's working and what isn't. And mind you, we were in that time frame where all of the federal regulation changes were coming down. Developmental Disabilities Administration. So we're all, in some way, starting off at ground zero because they were handed the same new set of rules. So as we started to work together, the identification of really putting people in, we did change up some roles for people on our senior leadership team. My original senior leadership team, probably now 5 of those are not here any longer. So the key was to identify what needed to transcend their departure. What skill sets did we need to have in place in line with the changes that we were expected to be making over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. So we succession planned, if you will. We were all literally at the back end of a strategic plan and starting a new succession plan. So we started to identify those skill sets that needed to be in, senior leadership positions going forward to successfully continue our mission as well as align with all the rule changes that were happening. So I think that probably my biggest point of this would be to engage and embrace your folks that are more experienced and are willing to share and feel that they are valued, giving them that value to know that they can really help you mold the organization as it needs to be molded going forward. And then not taking away of fear, because I think fear is another word that I find creeps into organizations when leadership comes in. It's like people spend so much time saying, wonder what they're going to do, wonder how they're going to do this, wonder how they're going to do that. Are they going to get rid of me? Are they going to keep me? This sort of thing. And laying that groundwork that states that's not going to happen. We're all going to work together to change and evolve. And, change management is an interesting thing because the old adage is you're always going to have people that are going to get on the bus with you, they're going to get on the bus and go with you. And then you're going to have the people that are going to stand there on the corner when the bus is there. They're going, I don't know if I get on that bus or not. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. And then at some point, some of them will get on. And then there's that group over here that's going to say, I ain't getting on that bus. There's no way I'm getting on that bus. and that's okay, because if you put it out there in such a way where everybody's had that opportunity to weigh in for that change management and that leadership, succession change, then they get to make the decision. You're not putting that on them. You're giving them all the information they need to say, that's not for me. So they self-identify. And I think that is, it's just about building that, that type of a leadership team to help identify those areas. The bus riders, I think I'm getting on. I might not get on the bus I'm never taking that bus.
Cindy, I don't know if you meant to do this, but you bring up perhaps one of the most well-known leadership books ever written, which is Good to Great. And in Good to Great, they talk about not only being on the right bus, but being in the right seat on the bus. Because a lot of times, as you said, there are people like, yes, I want to be with you, Cindy. And you have to look at them and go, great, you're in the wrong role. And they may hear that and go, what do you mean I'm in the wrong role? I see potential for you doing this instead of what you are doing. And are you okay with that? And if you're not, then let's have a different conversation, because I think you'll be great at this. I think you'll serve the organization well. And again, a lot of business leaders, they're not willing to take that pause. They're not willing to take that perspective. They're not willing to make that evaluation. So for everybody listening or watching today, if you leave this show today with one thing, I think that's the one thing you have to walk away with. And Cindy gave lots of jewels. Rewind the last 25 minutes and listen to it again and take notes. It feels like I'm saying that every week now. I feel like I have to encourage our audience. Listen once, rewind it, listen again with your notepad and your writing implement of choice, and take those highlights, because you laid out about a dozen pieces that are fundamental to what it means to be a great leader. So first of all, thank you so much for that. And Alison, any parting thoughts for Cindy before we wrap up her segment today?
No, like I said, I was caught early with giving people the voice, and just, I love the helicopter idea and just the ability to ask for help, right? You were humble enough to say, hey, I know I'm coming in as a leader, but I have no idea what's entailed here, and leaning into that. And I think we get a lot of respect from our peers, and then we give them permission to serve, right? And to be a part of. And any team that is comprised of people that are a part of is just more engaged and more successful. So I thought that was brilliant also. And thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you both.
Yeah, Cindy, thank you so much for being on the show today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. For our listening audience, I want you to hear my voice. If you're watching, I want you to see my face, and I want you to understand that what Cindy's organization does is serves families like mine. And I'm guessing many of you listening to this show know me personally, but you've probably never met my son. And the challenges of having a child with an intellectual disability. Having a child with a disability, period, is difficult. Anytime that you have a loved one who is held back by something outside of their control, you as an individual struggle because your first instinct is to help them. And you can't do it alone. It's impossible. Now, we do a lot of things on our own because we have to. But I encourage all of you to check out the Arc of Howard County. Just go to their website. Maybe donate $25. Maybe volunteer for an hour. I promise you'll feel good after the experience. And you'll learn a lot. A couple of years ago, April is Autism Awareness Month, and that's when this episode is going to be published. A couple of years ago, I wrote a blog on LinkedIn talking about what having a son with autism has taught me about sales. And she keyed in on a couple of those things. The first is, I have to listen to my son 10 times harder than I listen to the average conversation. Because while my son is verbal, if you don't have context for what he's saying, it is very difficult to understand how to help him. So think about that in the sales world for just a moment. How often have we been in a conversation with a business partner or a client, and you're not 100% sure what they're asking? Most people will default to pretending like they understand because they don't want the other person to think that they don't understand. And that's absolutely the wrong take. The right take is to go, let me make sure I understand you. Because you're first validating that person's voice. And second, you're making sure you actually understand what they meant, because at least half the time they go, no, that's not what I meant at all. I'm like, oh, okay. Run me through it again. Obviously, I didn't pick it up the first time. And then with that, having patience. Sales, on the one hand, is I want it all, I want it now. Gimme, microwave it. But that's the result. To get to the result, you often have to be exceptionally patient. Alison, you and I started working together, so partnering almost a year ago, believe it or not.
How about it?
And I'm willing to bet that 3 or 4 of the introductions I made for you back then, you're just now getting to a point where you're actually going to close a deal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one I'm thinking while you're speaking is really it applies to all relationships, right? One, context is key, and it's the other person's and ours, right? I hear what I hear based on what I'm experiencing in this moment, right? And what else may be coming in through my filters. And that idea of what I hear is not necessarily what is being said. And I can't tell you personally how many times that's gotten me into trouble. I hear something that is not being said. And then to confirm it out loud, one, just being verbal about what you think you hear is so helpful, because then you hear it. I know for me, right? What goes on in my head and what comes out of my mouth are very different, right? For better or worse. And so confirming out loud, hey, here's what I heard. And sometimes I can write myself just by saying it. And I'm like, oh, wait, maybe that's not what they're saying. And to your point, confirm with your prospect, hey, is this what you're saying? Because this is what I'm hearing. No, that's not, right? It's like, oh, okay. And you also give them the automatic, okay, this person's listening to me. They care, right? They're not just taking notes and waiting for the next opportunity to be able to share. So I think that's huge. And then, yeah, being patient. My goodness. One blessing of COVID is that my time is warped, right? Like you said, I was away last week. I went to Puerto Rico, and I came back. And one key for me that I'm doing my life right is that I came back and I just kind of picked up, and I'm very happy, right? I'm not like, oh my God, I have to change everything. I did that a month ago though. So that's a sidebar, but the idea of like, okay, we're a year in, right? In 6 days, I think, is when this all happened. I don't know, March 16th last year. That's what I have in my head, but
the anniversary is almost here.
Yeah. And I'm like, so we've gone through a year, right? So all the seasons, all the big holidays, iconic personal holidays, celebrations, and then of course the negative things too. But it's like, all right, so we've all endured this for a year. Now what, right? And I have people coming back now that I talk to, as you mentioned, and then I have people that are still like, this isn't over yet, so I think we need to circle back at the end of this year. And I have respect for that, right? I mean, a lot of things have changed, and a lot of things have not, all at the same time.
Yeah, and we can take COVID out of that conversation for a moment, because when a prospective customer isn't ready to sign, there's always an excuse why. Now, sometimes that excuse is valid because we, as the sales professional, didn't do a good enough job of explaining the value. And I'll be very candid. That's something that I often still struggle with. I like to think of myself as articulate. I think I drive to the point. I think I win more than I lose, but there are still plenty of times where I want to pull my hair out of my head because I'm looking at this prospective client going, what don't you get? What am I missing? Please tell me, because in my mind, this is very black and white. You need to do this. So why you're not doing it is beyond me. And then if I sit in their seat for a minute, I understand that there are financial considerations, there are priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And as a leader, as a business leader, you can get that paralysis of analysis. You can have 100 things in front of you that must be done right now. So what you decide to do is none of them.
Yes. I'm not one to be paralyzed very often. I have the opposite. I'm a bulldozer, right? So I can in fact, a lot of my sticky notes are like, slow down, pause, chill out, right? Because I'm like, oh, just do it all at once, right? But yeah, I understand, and ranking level of priority, and we talk about this a lot, valuing your own time, right? So, it's cost, reward, and then there's opportunity cost, there's literal financial cost, there's time cost, and I think all of that comes into play with all of this.
I remember, this is going back at least 10 years ago, back when cold calling on the telephone was still cool. I was using Sales Genie, which no longer exists. They have a new name now, but I got in this list of contacts from Sales Genie. And it was one of those very frustrating conversations where I got someone to talk to me, but they refused to meet with me.
Interesting.
And I said to the person, I'd like to ask you a question. And I know this is going to sound flippant, and I don't mean to be flip when I ask this, but I'm telling you that my services can save your company money. Why wouldn't you be interested in that? And her immediate response was, we are much more concerned about the beans coming in than the beans going out. And that's not what she said, but that was
right.
The essence of her issue, that saving money was great, but if I couldn't show her how the company could make more money, then she didn't have time to talk to me. And that's something that, as a salesperson, you need to figure out, because saving clients money is great. I made a career out of that, literally. But you have to take that next step, because while the owner of a business likes spending less, they know that other things are going to come up. It is 10 times more important to them to make more than it is to spend less. Spending less is good. Making more always trumps it.
Correct. Yep.
And so that's a challenge you and I face on a daily basis. Where do our solutions fit in for that organization, and how do our solutions help that company make more money? And we both can put examples to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we do is get behind the bottom line and help with engagement overall, but that also takes time, right? So your first year or two may not be saving money because we have to right the ship, right? We have to get underneath of what the issues are and create a more congruent process, a more streamlined process, and HR. There are so many layers to HR as there are IT, but right, there's the reactive stuff on top, there's the transactional stuff, and then as you get into the real roots of it, with the softer things, the day-to-day things, performance, training, professional development, culture. And that's not, you can't jump right into that. You have to earn your way in and work your way down. So for those listening, both sales and business leaders and owners, it's time takes time, right? Things I must earn. And there's an element of patience to that. And there's the ability to have foresight and long-term thinking beyond just the today's dollar, right? And I know it can be scary. She brought up fear. I love that. To think about spending more when you don't know that you're going to have it. But, if spending more is going to eventually turn it around so that you're making more, would you do that? Right? Would you invest in yourself and your organization to be able to do that? And I find for me, when the answer is yes to that, it happens much more quickly than when you're resistant. Because once I stop resisting, it's like the door's just open, right? But when we're sitting there waiting to get on the bus, again, to use her analogy, it's really hard to clear the path for more, right?
Yeah, and I'm gonna personalize the analogy you just made because it's great. And specifically for your industry, HR, for my industry, IT, we are an expense. But the value of that expense compared to not, people don't always understand that. And I'm going to give this example from my own personal life to sort of illustrate it. So for years, my wife and I, we used a friend to do our taxes annually because I'm in sales. If you're in sales, your taxes are not simple. Every year they give us this benefit, they take that benefit away. You assumed all year you're going to have that benefit, so you set your tax. It's nightmarish. I'm not a trained tax expert. My wife is an accountant, but she's not a trained tax expert. So we had this person we used for many years, and this person did a good job. And something happened where that person was no longer local and couldn't do our taxes anymore. And I said, well, I have a good friend that's a CPA. Let's talk to him. And I think he charges us 2 times or like 150% more than the old person did. But every year that he's done it for us now, he's managed to make sure that everything we deserve to get back, we did. And even in very tough years, he has helped us weather the storm.
Mm.
So what does that mean? That means that I don't have to worry about my taxes. I just have to send that stuff to him, and I can go do what I'm really good at. And for you business owners listening, unless you own an HR company, you shouldn't be doing your own HR. Unless you own an IT company, you shouldn't be doing your own IT. And I'll take that a step further. Even if you do own your own HR company, you probably still shouldn't be doing your own HR. Because as the leader of the company, your hours will make more money for your company doing other things. And that's the big miss. When I talk to a prospective client and the swing and the miss happens, it's because they don't understand or they don't want to understand that by having Mike do this for me or by having Alison do this for, not literally because I'm not an IT person, Alison's not an HR person, but our organizations, by having us do those things for your company, take whatever we're charging you. Think about this for a moment. Whatever we charge you, let's say it's $1,000 a month. I'm just picking a random one. How many hours a month do you work? You work a 40-hour week? If you're an owner, you're probably more like 60 or 70. Let's go with 40. So 160 hours in a month. Divide that by 1,000. Now, you're not spending all 160 hours on what I do or what Alison does. But think about that.
Yep.
What's your hourly rate?
Yep.
Take the revenue of your company. You can do gross revenue, you can do net profit, whatever makes you happy. Take that number and divide it by the hours in a month that you work. Now you know your worth.
Yep.
So if I cost $1,000 and your worth is $500 an hour, let's say you're only worth $250 an hour. Am I giving you at least 4 hours back every month?
Yep.
I guarantee you I am.
Yep.
And what can you do with those 4 hours? What can you compound month after month by me giving you back those 4 hours? So now maybe you're worth $300 an hour.
Yep.
And then a year later you're worth $350. And that was your point, right? That first year maybe it's not a cost savings, maybe it's an expense, maybe it's an investment.
Yep.
But that's a nice dividend after 12 months, right?
Yeah, and that's a huge part of my proposal build and writing and walkthrough is monetizing somebody's time, right? Especially if they have an HR person in the room and they're overwhelmed, not able to do the things that they went to school to do and that they were hired to do. I help them monetize their time and say, hey, I am going to be a $30,000 investment, but to hire someone to do the things that you need done, that's a $70,000 hire. Right. And even if they're not looking to hire, still monetizing the time so that they can see and just getting time back to be available. Right. And just what you said with the tax situation, you don't want to be doing that yourself. Right.
Nope.
And just like
when I was 21, it was fine.
Yeah. Right.
Now not so much.
My gosh, I know. And I think back to when I had my own business and I did my own taxes, and then I found someone to do it and my life was just easier, and she found the dollars that I couldn't. So it's just allowing people to do for you the things that you're not supposed to be doing, right? And okay, so what if you can? That doesn't mean that you should, right? And just like for me,
that's a bingo moment, Alison. Well done.
Well, one, and it's also an unbiased perspective, right? That's what I was thinking when you were sharing about even if you own an HR company, you shouldn't do your own HR. Like you're too close. You can't see stuff that somebody else outside could. Just like I pay people to write my own food plans and training plans. Of course I could do it. People ask me to do it for themselves, but I'm too close to myself, right? Plus I don't want to think about it. I want to free myself to be able to live the rest of my life. And I'm willing to pay for that because I really do value my own time. So food for thought for those listening.
Yeah, and I'm going to wrap up with this. You just touched on something that I think is nothing short of brilliant. But having that outside perspective, we talk a lot about emotional intelligence. We talk about everyone has blind spots.
Yep.
And I have this argument, I'll call it an argument because I usually get kind of loud with our president all the time. I'll be talking about a prospective client and he will say something to the effect of, well, I know I would never do that. And my pushback to him every time is, Keith, very few business leaders think the way you do. I said, and I tell him, you're a unicorn in a lot of ways. And there's goods and bads that come with that. Absolutely. There's no such thing as a perfect business owner. So for you people that are listening, stop beating yourselves up. You're not perfect. You're never going to be. Just keep striving. But that's a difficult piece, is to recognize this person in front of me doesn't necessarily think the way I do. And the more you can work to understand how the person across the table is thinking, the more successful the conversation can be.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it can be very adversarial, and that can do more damage than good. So, Alison, final thoughts before we wrap up this week's episode?
I wish I was always this relaxed after vacation, right? I just feel like everything's all right. No, I love the reminder, as always, to listen. And I share this with you every time we have a guest. Like, selfishly, I derive so much benefit from hearing others' experience, real time on the job, know-how. And it's just such a reminder, like, listen with eyes and ears, as she said. I love that. And confirm, is this what you said? Because this is what I heard. And remembering that just because I hear something doesn't mean that that's what is being said. So I love those nuggets today.
Yeah, I thought it was a great interview and a lovely way to end our little Howard County themed 3-part series. And folks, we have some tremendous guests coming up for you over the next 4 months. You're really going to enjoy this. We've got the higher education theme that we're coming up with, which will include Towson University, UMBC, and High Point University.
Awesome.
Lots of other business owners and business leaders coming up as well. We've got people from the private sector. We have a dentist coming up. I mean, you name it, we have it coming for you. So thank you all again so much for listening to Mike and Alison After Hours. And remember, if you're watching, drop a comment on the YouTube channel because I'm paying attention. And drop a comment on any one of our podcast platforms. I check them regularly, and I'm looking for people to engage with, answer questions. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, please reach out to us. We would love to talk to you about what your business is and what leadership has meant for you. So for Alison Haas, I am Mike Sheila. Thank you again for listening to Mike and Alison After Hours. And as always, people helping people. It's powerful stuff.
Thank you for joining Mike and Alison After Hours. Tune in next time for another great business owner sharing valuable industry ideas. Want to be a guest on our show? Contact us at answers@getadvantage.com.